I'm Jim Niehaus. I'm chair of the Lakes Committee. This has been a 5-year passion project for me. I tell you, it's an interesting world out there. I'd like to introduce the other members of the Lakes Committee as we go around. If you'll stand up, please. Steve Putnam. All right. Eric Nicolai. Scott DeFlippis. Jen Eversole. I'm not sure if she's here tonight. And Babu Matthew. I know she comes to all of our meetings. Any Lake Watch, University of Florida Lake Watch volunteers here tonight? All right. All right, we got a few. Okay. All right. I see Stu back there. All right. Dave. I'm going to get our guests introduced here. I think we're just working out these final things, so just a couple other things I want to recognize. You know, I do want to take an opportunity to certainly thank the current and former board members, you know, for being at the point that we're at. I think we've really made some strides to get to know our lakes. You know, it's through a lot of the experiences that we've had here that maybe they've opened our eyes to the importance of the waterways. But certainly, you know, we're getting to a point where we're starting to take some major steps towards revitalizing these waterways. I want to thank Steve Putnam for helping bring this presentation together tonight, and really appreciate this. Is great attendance here. This shows dedication of a community. I did pick up results. I went to a meeting last week with the University of Florida, and they had given us the health report on the lakes. I do have these results. They're going to be uploaded to our website, and so they'll be available for residents to look at and to study. Without getting into a whole lot of detail, I mean, obviously, there are some concerns. We're just happy to have a doctor in the house tonight, so I'll be introducing him just shortly. Is Jackie Wegg here, by chance? I was just going to share a story while we're working this out, but Jackie is a resident here in Hopefield. She called me on Saturday. I was in between tours in Matlacha, and she reported a distressed Nhinga. This is one of our diving birds that frequent the lake. And it had something wrapped around its beak, so it was definitely in trouble. But she happened to call me. I just happened to be coming in the community. You know, it was, I talked with her briefly, so she had attempted with others to try to capture the bird to help it, but they had little success, but she was kind enough to call me, and I stopped, and luckily Scott DeFlippis was driving by, so he also stopped and asked what you're doing, and I said, well, you know, there's a bird, someone has called. So as we were about to leave, I said, let's take one last look, and I looked up the sidewalk. There was the bird coming towards us, and sure enough, we could see that something was wrapped around its beak. It was in trouble. And it didn't take long. We were able to round the bird up, and Scott got a hold of it. I had some little clippers that we were able to remove what was fishing line. That was probably 30 wraps of braid line around this Nhinga's beak, so it was unable to open it. But we were able to help it out, and then we released it there. We didn't think it was necessary to take it in, you know, for evaluation at that point. It didn't appear to have any real physical injuries. A little bump on the head, no telling how that happened, but likely it was, you know, somebody was fishing and may have hooked into that bird, and it got twirled around the beak. So luckily, it seems that everything worked out. I did a follow-up there yesterday and did not notice the bird. When we released it, it was kind of cool because you know how ostriches will bury their heads in the sand when they don't want to be seen, make themselves invisible? Well, the Nhinga had turned its neck around and actually buried its head back in its wings. So it was kind of cool, and I'm like, well, I guess this is what they do. You know, they just, he's had enough excitement for one day, but this in itself was just a great example of a community that is engaged and observant of things that are going on with our waters. And we have a growing awareness of not only the ecological importance of our waterways, but also the economical value to the community of having healthy waterways. You know, this is a special place that we call home, and we share this space with an abundance of diverse wildlife. And it really is an honor with some of the things that we see as wildlife comes into our community, and then we also can kind of hear at times. you know, and their presence and their well-being is really a direct measure of our environmental stewardship, as well as our willingness to coexist with things. There are some exceptions to that, and I know these are things we may get a little bit into tonight, but are definitely going to have some follow-up information to share with residents. But, you know, one of the exceptions is when would be wildlife that is fed by humans. This is a process of domestication and truly a tragedy in the making. And I think as we can share more information and kind of understand how maybe we mean well, but what actually happens, you know, the cause and effects there are really, you know, to be appreciated. So we'll get more into that as we go along. I know there was one thing I was not going to get in tonight, but as we did our inspections, we went out and looked at several of our lakes and came back. But we do have some other things and opportunities that we can do a better job at cleaning up out there. You know, I won't get into it because it was not a very pleasant sight that I saw. I can tell you it was within 10 feet of a dog waste receptacle, what I saw there. That, you know, that's not a pretty sight. I mean, we're not the most perfect species on the planet, but we have the brains to do better and to be responsible pet owners. But understanding the cause and effect of human impacts on water quality can help guide us and to do our lakes right. Even though our lakes are interconnected, each is its own entity. Each has a unique personality and is a complex system that experiences continual physical and chemical changes. And in support of expanding our alliances with water management experts to help guide us and validate, you know, some of the steps that we're taking in our vision of establishing and maintaining pristine waterways in our community, and really to be at a point where maybe we can serve as a gold standard to other communities. You know, we're not here to make them envious, but we do want to be the shining star in the sky here. We welcome. We have a dynamic duo here tonight. I was going to call you Aquadoc and Water Woman, I guess we'll go with. But more specifically, it is Dr. Ernesto Lasso de La Vega. Okay, he would do a better job at this than me. But he is a local biologist who does research in water and environmental sciences and aquaculture. He has worked at the Lee County Hyacinth Control District for more than 25 years, where he specializes in aquatic weed control and public education. Okay, I wasn't sure what I'm hearing out there, but it wasn't an echo. Ernesto has been teaching environmental science, biology, microbiology at area universities since the early 90s. Mm-hmm. He manages the Lee County Hyacinth Control District water quality laboratory associated with Pond Watch. So it's another program we're considering in terms of getting another stream of data from our lakes. And so I'll let Ernesto get started, and then I'll introduce our guests from the Aquatic Systems. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Jim, did you mind putting your password so I can get to the website? And I gotta be very moderate because I have a speaker and the microphone here. I don't want to blast it. So I have a PowerPoint presentation. It's not that long. I'm going to keep it very short because I want to hear more questions that coming for the interest of the lake. We can go with Sandoval presentation if you don't mind. And then, yeah, I can control that. So I work at the Lee County Hyacinth Control District along with mosquito control. You know, you're paying taxes for mosquito. There's another portion for the Hyacinth Control District, and that we take care of rivers, the Cape Coral canals, and also ponds. But some private ponds, and we are not going to take care as the private companies will take care of the ponds. We're doing ponds that are abandoned or just regular ponds that has no management or anything, and we go. But we have a program called Pond Watch, and that's the program that we had it since 1992. We started. So we have 100 volunteers who have been bringing samples to us. And, oh yeah, you go to the next one. So this is the purpose of the program. The reason I'm bringing it here is because we're inviting you to participate on this program. It's Lake County. The other program that you belong already is the Lake Watch. Lake Watch is in University of Florida. You're sending samples there. Well, we run analysis of samples here in Lake County, and it's not any cost at all because you're already paying taxes. So the money is already there. We're doing this program for that. Educate the community about the conditions of the pond. You already know a lot, but we want to add more information. Understand the dynamic, and that is the thing about the year. When we're sampling monthly. So you have the whole story, how the behavior of the pond throughout the year. They educate the resident with management practices that benefit overall the control of the pond weeds. So we try to educate in a way to reduce the amount of nutrients and the amount of weeds that are coming from the nutrients excess. Next one, please. Yes, so 27 years, and this is all the activities we have done, workshops, education, and we generate data as well. Next one. So a big shot on the pictures of all the ponds that we have taken care in Lee County. Of course, Cape Coral's over there. We have some Cape Coral volunteers as well. The next one. My goodness, the pictures are not so good. I want to show you here is what is the condition. This is in the year 2009, I believe. This one is now. So the development, this is the interstate. This is all the developing plantation and all the area where it has been completely developed. I wanted to show the difference. Next one, please. More pictures, more ponds. So there's whole Lee County is loaded with ponds, and they're all ponds, and they're all stormwater ponds, not lakes. Next one. So some of the front sampling protocol, which I'm not going to go into detail, is pretty much similar as a Lake Watch. Collect the samples, bring it to us, and we run the analysis. Next one. Oop. Okay, next one, because there's some. And the type of sampling devices, sometimes it's a bottle at the end of a stick, and they collect the water. Next one, please. See, I want to go faster. Keep going, because these are all devices that my volunteers keep going. Next one, next one. Yeah, these are devices that they have come up with different types, and I want to show that there's different alternatives to collect the water. I know, that's a classic, but they do serve the purpose of collecting the water. This is the report that once a year we provide to every homeowner, and it has the name of the pond and all the information, how we do the analysis. Next one. I want to go fast because I want to leave time. So the location of the pond, the ponds, and the type of samples that are. Next one, the data. The data is in, of course, numbers and numbers, but graphics. Next one. Next one. This is a table that has information about what these numbers that we collected represent. This is the more than this range. This is less than this range. Less is not a big deal, but more, it is a big deal because it stimulates algae, produces indicators of nitrogen, oxygen problems. So this is what you guys want to see, not above this number. So I will have those numbers later, and every time you see a line, means that's the limit maximum that I have. So you see, oh, you're out of the line, you're out of line. Next one. Data discussion, keep going. Next one. The beautiful pond, next one. This is the data. So we have graphics. This is the whole last year. In 2018, this pond, particularly pond number 34, they go above those lines that you see there, the ones who are the red line. That is the line that is the maximum allowed to have. But then now you have this in a blue line went across that line. So it's showing that when the rain comes, which is where the blue, light blue here, rain comes, the phosphorus and nitrogen is increasing because of the runoff. So that's what the evidence, I say, nutrients come in because of the rain. Yes, and we have evidence. Next one. Oh, here's the continuation. Here, no, go back if you may. The one, yes, this is the green algae. The algae is measured in chlorophyll, and chlorophyll tells us how much algae. And if you have, thank you. If you have the nutrients that are present, algae will go up, and nitrogen is also there. So this is the evidence. Again, data showing, not oh, it looks pretty, oh, it looks bad. No, it's data that shows that. Next one, please. This is another pond. Now, this was more troublesome. The previous one, yeah, it went up, but it went down. This one, it stayed pretty much up there. This one, the line represents how much algae should not be above this line. Whoa, 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 in the summer. High nitrogen, algae. High phosphorus, algae. You see, we have evidence now. Next one. I'm sorry, I'm going too fast, right? No, we're better. So we put this data in something called the Water Atlas. The Water Atlas by the Charlotte Harbor NEP has provided this source, this place of putting all the data from PondWatch. Next one. These are the maps. Well, of course, it doesn't look so pretty, but it is pretty. And the maps are the dots where all the ponds are. You can click on one of those, your pond. Next one. And it will tell you the map where the pond is. The next one. Data. The data that you have been collected for many years, it shows a trend is going down, down, down. That's good, because then they give you an intention. Okay, how is the overall look of the pond? It's a trend going down. Of course, it goes up and goes up and down because that's life, you know, going up and down. But the overall trend is like that. Next one. Thank you. We have done some studies, and I wanted to show that because it's part of this group of volunteers, PondWatch, who gave me the data to prove. You remember the fertilizer ordinance in Lee County? It passed in 2008. Well, we took data from PondWatch 4 years before and 4 years after the fertilizer ordinances. And guess next one. Oh, by the way, this is the scientist who helped me on this project, because he said, oh, Ernesto, you need to publish that. We published that. Next one. This is showing that the data did have a decline on phosphorus, a decline also in chlorophyll, not so much in nitrogen. But these two declines were before and after the fertilizer. It did show they did decline, the nitrogen and phosphorus and chlorophyll decline because of the fertilizer ordinance. Next one. And we also have a consortium of different groups, and we call it WET Plan in Lee County, and also, yeah, expanding to Charlotte County as well. We have all these groups that are helping educate homeowners about the ponds and how to get information. Next one, please. And in this place, wetplan.org, you will find, next one, all these web videos of homeowners. Most of them are my pond watchers who have provide information, verbal statements, testimonials about what they have done in their ponds and what they have learned how to do stuff. Erosion. There's another one talk about littoral plants. Problems with plecostomus. There's a lady who talks about plecostomus. This one talks about littoral plants. I mean, there's a plethora of information there. So I highly recommend to go there and actually do this. Okay, a case study. So I presented this year in the PondWatch group these things that we learned, like the nutrient increase outside of the blackout fertilizer period. Finally, pond, and I can explain each one of these. Let's go to the next one. So what is the blackout? In Lee County, we have a blackout like June to September. No fertilization should be allowed because the water, because of the rain, it will run into the ponds. Okay, so that's the blackout. No fertilization. What I have found in PondWatch is that outside of this blackout, there's nutrients increase. Like say up there, the red one is in May here. The June blue is in the blackout. And in May, you have high peaks there, but not so much. Happens in the outside of the blackout. Look at this. The September is blue. The orange is October. October outside, September in blue. Look at theirs. High, 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 and then low, low. These low here are the 6 Mile Cypress Slough. And I took those ponds at the 6 Mile Cypress just to see if there was any evidence of this happening at there's no people living around the slough, so it did show that. One of my message here is that watch for the fertilizers. Watch for the fertilizer landscapers. And it's not that they mean bad. It's just that happens. It's unintended consequences. They spray in the pond with, the surrounding with the fertilizer, they will run into it. And I have evidence for that. Next one, please. And I'm almost done. Oh, for this pond is in Candlewood, 654. has been a trend going down since they have serious problems with the algae. And I'm so happy to see that trend because they put aerators and they worked at the community, improving the shorelines and improving also the runoff from fertilizers. Keep going to the next one. This is the same, oh, we're not gonna see this very well. What I wanted to show is the picture. This is, by the way, the Lee County Appraiser Office, LIPA. You can get the data to see pictures of your pond since 1998. They have pictures of your ponds. So I picked this one in 2000. It's pretty turbid, and I'm going to go all the way to 2000. I think this is the next one. Yeah, I went all the way. Keep going. Fast, 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 fast. Because you don't see that in this picture. It's not good quality right now. I wish it was. Because at the end, it shows that it is clarified. Has looked nice, nice and pretty. Let's go to the next one. Another thing about it. Ponds, when they're so deep, they get stratified. Means that the surface water is warm, the bottom is cold, more oxygen here, less oxygen here. That's what a stratification is, and this line shows that. It's pretty warm in the surface, pretty cold in the bottom in the June. The square is the June in the summer. In the winter, that stratification doesn't happen. It's pretty much homogeneous from the surface to the bottom. Next one, please. So this pond, number 14, pond 14, it was pretty deep. Deep, I'm talking deep. 5 meters. 5 times 3 is 15 meters. That's a pretty deep pond for the standards of Florida. So they put an aerator. Next one. And the pond, before they put the aerator, which was done here, it was stratified. You see the bottom oxygen was pretty low. The surface was high. But after you put the fertilization, everything got homogeneous. So aeration is a good strategy to break that stratification. In this pond here, if you go to the next one. Next one. Oh yeah, they put a bubbler. The next one. That's the box where the bubbler, where the pump is. Next one. This is the principle behind this aeration. You put an air stone and the bubblers going up and it mixes the pond. Mixing the pond is what the aeration does. So that mixing breaks that nutrients that has been accumulated in some areas. So most of the filamentous algae that you're probably experiencing has been because there's a pocket of nutrients that sits here and the filamentous creeps up and grows. But if you have a mixing pond, this might not happen as often because you're moving water all over the pond. So that's a little pitch about if aeration is positive. Next one. But be aware of this one. If you see the big tall buildings here, those represent ammonia in the bottom of the pond is very high before the aeration. After that, it levels out. Before aeration, it was high phosphorus in the bottom, and it levels out. But in the bottom, you have a lot of ammonia and phosphorus before you put the aerators. So what happened? Next one. What happened after you mix the whole thing? Well, the nutrients are now all over the surface. The weeds are going to grow, and they cover the whole thing with weeds. Next one. So we have to go and start treating those. But so that's a consequence that I want to warn you about that. When they put the aerator, it's like, oh, okay, well, it should be fixing. No, it will be something else comes out. Because now you have the nutrients. Is that bad? Well, at the beginning, yes, it will be bad. But eventually it comes back to good. Equalize. Blah, 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 blah. Move on to the next one. Yeah, I gotta go. Next. Okay, this same pond, I want to show you this because here you see phosphorus. It's kind of like, well, to you might not seem high, but to me it is high, these numbers here. Wait. Okay, so you don't want it. And then here, the next one. Boom. That was an alum treatment that was done in this pond. Alum took the phosphorus down to this level. And since then, these high algae blooms that you see here has not occurred except for this one here, which is not minor. It was a minor one, but everything has remained pretty much down. That's good. That was an alum treatment. What is alum? Alum is aluminum sulfate. It's used in the water treatment plants to settle all the particles, bacteria, and they use it in the pond to trap phosphorus, drag it down. Next one. How far I am? God, too far. Okay, this is your neighbor, royalty. And I wanted to show this because, okay, and I'm almost done. This is what I'm looking here. I'm telling the fellows here that we want is a shot picture of the whole community in one time before the rain, so we can see these are different ponds. All these are the ponds of royalty. And these fellows, they sample ponds. In every month, they sample 2 ponds and an extra one. The extra one is the rotation, because I cannot do every month there 20-something ponds. I can't. It's too much. So I tell them, give me 2, the worst ponds, and they rotate the other ones. So in a year, we have everybody in the pond. So that's what you have here, all the other ponds. And the lines, these are the maximum. They're above the red one. It's above phosphorus. The blue one is above phosphorus. So you see, this pond is problem. You can tell. Problem. Nah, maybe. Nah, they're fine. These 2 babies has to be under control, has to be observed. Next one. Same thing with nitrates and ammonia. Again, the 2 babies. Next one. Algae and total nitrogen. This, again, is showing you which ones are bad, which ones are bad. That's what you're gonna need. It's a snapshot of the ponds in the whole community, so you know which ones are the bad ones. Next one. Salinity. Oh, I want to just point out something. You're very close to the shoreline, to the saltwater system. You might get some intrusion. You know, you heard about the sea level rising. You might be tapping into some salt water. And if you don't measure the salinity, you should. Because I have noticed in my pond watchers that sometimes in the winter, the salinity goes up. And if it goes about 1.2, and you're irrigating, the grass will stress, and you will see grass dying out of salinity because you are irrigating with salty water. So be aware of that, and just in case. But I wanted to do that, and then, yeah, we see some nasty salinity here. So don't irrigate from that water. That's bad water. That's caca water. Next one. Yeah. Oh, this is you guys. Sandoval? Yeah. And this is royalty. Next one. Yeah, that was it. Done. Thank you very much. Now I want to leave it open for the next speaker. Sorry about the quality. It was better in my computer, my laptop.
Thank you, Will.
I'm going to pass this to the next person. Is that right?
So we'll be taking questions for anybody that's up here when we're done with our presentation.
Thank you, Ernesto. That was most entertaining. I think I developed a little trigger finger there. All right. So our next guest tonight is Lexus Pelfrey. She's the sales manager and biologist with the Aquatic Systems group. They've been our new vendor since January. Okay, very good. They do things a little differently than the last vendor, and you know I'm seeing some very positive things out there. We did an inspection. I think it was probably 5 or 6 lakes that we stopped at tonight to look at things, and we're seeing some good signs, some rebound of some of the beneficial plants. But it's through this cooperative effort that we're really able to validate, like I said earlier, and really gather more information and try to understand what's a good direction for us to be heading, because it's not just about the aeration. There's many other things that can affect the health of a lake, and it really starts with us and the things that we choose to do in our yard. And like Ernesto said, you know, we want to really monitor the fertilizer that goes down, especially with the large vendors, to see that they're doing things right. I mean, they're trained according to best management practices, but the enforcement of that really is, do we want them to self-police, or should we take charge and police those companies that come in here with the fertilizer? Because as the data shows, it does create a lot of complications. So Lexus, she's our primary point of contact with the Aquatic Systems. She also comes out here and does the monthly inspections and gives us a very nice detailed report, which we've posted on the website, so people are able to look at that. She likes numbers. I like names now. I mean, we've got a lot of numbers out there for our lakes, but I think we really concluded that the bordering streets is the best way to refer to a lake. So if you're contacting me or anyone on the Lakes Committee, just go with the streets. You throw a number out there. I don't do numbers anymore. So, all right. So Lexus is also inspects our wetland conservation area that we have here. It was interesting because I was putting together this data to really evaluate which lakes we would look at, and the year established, it's like, well, that's a natural area. So that's a section in our community that is unchanged, you know, since people came here. So I thought it was a pretty interesting point in my day. But she does, in addition to looking at everything, she also provides solution to address water quality issues and management of invasive vegetation, which, you know, we do have problems in some of our lakes with very stubborn weeds that can get established there. She's homegrown here in Cape Coral, and you know, is very passionate with her work. She's certainly available to you know, have residents approach her at any time when you see her out inspecting. She's here at the end of each month, and I'll hand it over to you.
Oh gosh. Oh wow, you can really hear yourself on this thing.
You can switch
Oh.
mics if you'd like.
Oh yeah, that's a little too close for comfort. That's much better. So I'm just going to go ahead and start. I do have my list of lake numbers with the names, because I know a lot of homeowners say, you know, the Asheville Lake, and I have no idea what that means. So I brought that just in case if there's questions, I can go ahead and convert those. So I'll just go ahead and start a little bit about myself. I hold a bachelor's in science degree from Florida State University in environmental science with a minor in meteorology. So yeah, that was fun. And I did some work with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. I worked with their lead meteorologist doing particulate matter readings across the southeast. They wanted to test, you know, the different air quality and match it with EPA to see if it was correlating correctly. It was not. So there was that. So I'm going to go into some basic data that our Vertex department gathered for your aeration proposal. So it's very simple data. It's just your total phosphorus, your DO temperature readings, and your Secchi depth readings. So your Secchi disc it's a disc with two different colors on it, a black and white, and you'll lower it down into the water column. And what it does is kind of reads water clarity and depth. So you can see how far down, you know, it goes before you can't read it anymore, and that'll give you a good idea of, you know, the water clarity. And then there was another question. Vertex Water Features is our products division. They do aeration and fountains, so they're the ones that provided this data to their design department so that they can come up with a good plan of, you know, cabinet locations, how many air stations need to go in the pond. So yeah, that's our products division. So this is some data. I'm not sure if you guys can read it from way back there, but it did show, this is lake number 6, which is your Sunvale and Bellingham Lake. And that showed that you guys had some pretty high phosphorus readings. And it did show slight stratification. We took this data during the winter time, which typically doesn't show stratification when we go to sample ponds. Just due to natural flipping, which Ernesto kind of touched on a little bit. So this is some data for this lake. This is lake number 10, which is the Windwood Stony Hill Cannon Lake. This actually, I wanted to show a difference in lake because not every lake is the same. Every lake behaves differently. Even though they're interconnected, they're all in the same system, they do behave differently. This lake in particular, where I have noticed some shoreline grass growth, this didn't really have high phosphorus readings. And this also didn't really show stratification, but that was also the time of the year that we grabbed it. So this is lake number 10. This is lake number 15. This is just right across the way. That is the Maryville Lake in Sandoval. Parkway Lake, I believe that's what that's called. This had very high phosphorus readings, and that's kind of the problems we've noticed at that lake with filamentous algae, planktonic algae, a lot of shoreline grass growth, some aquatic plants that are growing in there. That's a good indicator of high phosphorus, and you guys did have some high phosphorus readings. This is lake number 24, which we actually looked at today. This is the Vero Lambe Lake. Vareo. And this actually had really high phosphorus readings. This was probably one of the highest readings that our Vertex department gathered. So that shows very high over the action level threshold. So I'm going to get more into what our side of the company gathered, Aquatic Systems. We did a muck assessment. Sean, your old GM, was kind of concerned with muck levels and probably having to do dredging, which he kind of didn't want to, and then also look and see if aeration would help reduce any muck levels that you guys were having in the pond. So he just wanted to assess that. That's a little bit more of an in-depth look into the lake, and these are all snapshots in time, so this isn't just, it's good to have more than just one set of data, but this gives you a good starting off point of what these lakes looked at, October 16th, 2018. So we gathered 3 different site locations, number 3, 13, and 14. I'm not going to go over all the names of the lakes, but if you guys want to talk to me after, I can do that for sure. But that we went over dissolved oxygen, temperature, we went over your Secchi depth readings, and this had a little bit more nutrient analysis to it. It had phosphorus, nitrogen, and ammonia. And then we also did core sampling. So we gathered some core samples of, so we can look at muck depth, sediment organic content, your suspended solids in the water column, bathymetric mapping, and your particular organic matter content. So this is site number 3, one of the sites that we sampled. And this is the readings. So as you can see, your phosphorus and nitrogen were high, especially at the bottom. Your ammonia was a little higher at the surface. That also could be from like ducks or other type of birds on the lake at the time of sampling. Here's your water column profile. This showed stratification. So once you got to a certain depth, we see 4 parts per million dissolved oxygen as our aquatic stress level, where you could see possible fish kills, stuff of that nature, where it's almost like suffocation of the lake. And so we did see some different stuff there. Here's your bottom sediment analysis for this pond. You can see some muck in the depth. We don't really have a baseline desired range for the muck depth, so we kind of just assumed 5 is to be high. There's no real scientific data that says, 10 inches is bad, 5 inches is bad. So we just kind of labeled that as that. So this is some of your data. Here's some bathymetric mapping. This goes over, some depths and stuff. You can see you guys, lake number 12, have some pretty deep areas. And not actually a lot of vegetation. I was kind of surprised by that. I thought there would be some more, aquatic vegetation growing in the lake, but this data showed at time of sampling there really wasn't a whole lot other than just the partial perimeters. Here's lake number 13. So as you can see, you guys were pretty high still, especially with ammonia. Here is your water column profile. This also showed stratification. And it's good to note the time of year that we took this. This is getting out of like the summertime when the waters are still stratified, still, that cooler, dense layer at the bottom, the warmer, dense or less dense air at the top, or water at the top, and they naturally flip. Here's your bottom sediment analysis for this lake. As you can see, it's still high. Here's the bathymetric mapping for this lake. And I'll answer any questions at the end. I just know that we have gym to get through as well. This lake was a little deeper than the last one in some areas. And again, not a lot of vegetation growing. Here's site number 14. As you can see, it's very high. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And this lake as well is stratified. Here is your bottom sediment analysis. And here's your bathymetric mapping. So this lake as well is pretty deep, is 13 feet. And again, not a lot of aquatic vegetation. So Ernesto already covered a lot of these, but a lot of your sources from nutrients, you guys have reclaimed water you use for irrigation. And I've noticed when doing my inspections, I've seen some of the sprinkler heads going straight into the lake. That's a good source of nutrients getting in there. Breakdown of organic matter. I've noticed a lot of grass clippings in the lake. That will add to the nutrient levels in your lake. I'm not quite sure if you guys have a recharge well. I don't think I've seen one in any of the lakes, but that, some communities have those. Those do cause nutrients to build up in the lake. And why do we need to manage the nutrients? Because I know nobody wants their lakes to look like that. Fish kills, bad odors, the reduced of oxygen. You have all that buildup organic matter. I know people don't want to dredge the lakes. All these constant algae blooms where it's not just, in the littorals, it's like the entire lake. And here's my sources. So I went through that kind of fast, but I'm here to answer questions.
Thanks. Thanks, Lexus. Yeah, and I think we're just going to open it up. So, any questions you have. I don't have much more to go on about. I made my points earlier. Yes, Andre.
We know the lakes are interconnected. Do we know what kind of water movement exists between these lakes? And what would make that happen?
So,
what's the connection? I know next to our house there's an underground conduct. How big is it? The fact that they're interconnected, does it really work? Does the water move around all over the place?
here, and I'll answer this, and maybe they can correct me. But the engineering drawings, I've basically have set up links to all of the engineering drawings showing all of the interconnects, every single yard drain, street drain, where it goes. It's a pretty impressive engineering feat, the construction of our stormwater management system. That's what it is. It's a bunch of interconnected lakes. Because if we get a lot of rain up in phase 3, it's a balancing act that it's going to move that water down and raise the lake levels as it moves around our community. Now there are outfalls that are on the east side, several of them. The water, if it fills up in here to such a point, it'll discharge out to the canal systems out there. The piping problems aren't in here, they're out there. When we had the rain in 2017 and I could kayak around my street, I had to do it, but nobody's house flooded. Nobody's yard flooded. Yes, our streets were inconvenienced, but we were accepting water. We were basically the overflow for the city of Cape Coral. But it was through that process we identified some limitations outside. And I know the board is aware of this, and they're working with the city to get that corrected, because you never know. But our system is there to balance, to attenuate, the different rains. So, but you can look at drawings at any time. If it's balanced, there's no need for movement, so it requires rainfall to then, fill a certain area, and then it'll balance towards the next connected area, so it works down the line. Yeah.
I just might mention that all these interconnected pipes and all the drains that you see in the streets, there's a program that each year we're doing a third of those. and their company comes in with a big sucking truck, and they clean all those areas out. They go through the pipe that interconnects all those lakes. So to think that we're going to be backed up here when we have another storm that produces a lot of water, we're clean. So we were clean enough to get the water to go out the last time, but there was some backup, and now that has all been addressed and cleared. So I think we're in much better shape than we were in 2017.
That's a great point. So we're required to maintain that. One thing I forgot to bring in, because as we did our inspections, I found several bottles, other garbage, and I found a bag. So I put everything in the bag, and I thought I'd bring that here because, again, it's one of the examples of human impact on these systems. Because if we leave that trash out there, it eventually works its way into the street drain. It gets into those systems. It can impair those systems. So that's part of the reason we're inspecting it. The company is called Sewer Viewers, so they run a camera down there to see that those pipes are clear, and then they draw anything they end. But again, only rain should go down those drains. Anything other than rain can have an impact on water quality and can also impede the function of that stormwater system, which is there to protect us. Yeah.
I want to add one more thing because in other communities that I have measured, the leaf from the trees will clog up inside those covers that you don't see. So they can be clogging year after year. So if you don't have a maintenance, cleaning up those lines, you will clog up and you will be actually producing a lot of nutrient sources from those culverts that are loaded with debris and detritus and leaf. You have a question?
Well, I just want to make the point, there's a lot of confusion in the community about the drains, and they are often referred to as storm sewers, and they do not go into a sewer system. They are storm drains, and they drain storm water directly into our lakes. That's why the only thing that can go down them that won't harm the lakes is rainwater. So I need to make sure everybody's really clear on that.
So that is storm water that is collected in our lakes. It doesn't go anywhere after that.
There is a fill point on our system, and there are outfalls on the east side that go underneath Surfside. So there are 3 lakes there that have a raised concrete structure, and so that's when water will get moved from our community to the outside. The whole intent of the environmental resource permit that we have, which is the design, is we're expected, because we developed here, to protect the outside water. So, and I think if I'm correct, they want us to keep our filth to ourselves. Am I right about that? They don't want us to discharge out there anywhere else. They want us to keep it here, clean it here, and then discharge it when it's clean. So,
Although you can clean your water before it goes outside, and I've seen that a lot. And like the last water in most of my pond watchers who have golf courses, the last water that discharges outside, I measure that, and I prove to them that they are cleaning, they're sending clean water to the environment outside. So you can have the last pond, the last drain before it goes outside, sample that and prove to the world that you are not the polluters to the environment.
Lexus had it in her presentation. It was, I think it was 13. It's Ashbury Lake has an outfall. So it receives, and again, it's only when it rains is water going to move between lakes, and there's really not much more of an exchange. It's structured so it's on a grade, but we could have a lot of rain in phase 2, and it might push water out to phase 3 and 1 just to balance, because everything is leveled out at that point. But I know on Ashbury, there's a lot of birds on that lake. It seems like an unnatural population of birds that's there. So that can be a contributing factor to a lot of these water quality problems. Because if we're gonna basically raise a bunch of birds in our yard, they're gonna cause a lot of waste, and that bacteria, in addition to the nutrients, are gonna get into the lakes and cause a further imbalance. So there's opportunities that we have here to think about things, and maybe more data can prove us to those things are causing that problem.
Is there a particular reason why there's an aerator just in one of the lakes, the one in the back?
So you're referring to the townhomes, Somerville? Oh, right over here. That's a visual feature, a water feature. So water is being pumped up into that fountain and then out. So there's the only aeration that occurs at the surface of the water. It's just same if we get a lot of rain, you know, we might aerate the surface of the water. So there's no circulation, no turning over of the pond water that's occurring with that. I mean, it's a nice feature, but it's minimal in terms of benefits that it brings.
Jim, can you contrast that to the aeration system that we're going to be installing for Lexus?
Yeah, so essentially, like, you know, Jim said, that fountain out there really only takes that first, like, small surface layer of the water body and kind of pushes it out and just keeps that surface layer moving. But to do, like, bottom aeration, that's going to circulate the entire water body. And we do keep those on 24 hours a day to keep that circulation constantly going so you're not having that stagnant buildup. So.
I might add one more thing about the benefit of that bubbler is that, yeah, it runs 24 hours, but it does take a lot of the muck that you have been accumulating because there's aerobic conditions now in the bottom of the pond, and aerobic bacteria will start breaking that muck and reducing the nitrate, the ammonia and some large molecules that are there. They need to be decomposed by bacteria, aerobic bacteria. Having their circulation helps a lot. In fact, it has extend the life of some ponds, and I've seen that a lot. They put an aerator in a pond, and then it reduces the amount of muck. Yes. Yes, sir.
What system are you planning to install? A surface aeration, diffuser?
Bottom aeration. Yes, under the water, all the way at the bottom, the deepest part of the lakes.
Permanent feature.
Yes, permanent feature.
And we will need that forever?
I don't.
As long as humans are here, you know, it depends. What do we want to get out of our lakes? I mean, if we want our lakes to support life, I mean, most things that live in the water, need dissolved oxygen. So over time, we're reducing through stratification. There's that layer that gets maybe more built up at the bottom that doesn't support life, so it becomes essentially a dead zone. So this is the way to restore that layer. It expands the areas that wildlife, fish, can. And if we want birds, we must have food for those birds. And so there's all the connections between the plants that are in the aquatic system, the habitat it provides for the fish that can forage there, that can develop, that can then draw the larger animals. So it just depends how much we want to share our space with the natural world.
Yeah, in fact, let me add to that. It is, yes, forever, because these are all artificial systems. They're not natural. So we adding stuff constantly, and then that's the problem there.
My question was based on the fact that we will have forever maintenance,
Yeah.
operational
Yep.
expenses. In addition to the capital cost, is the equipment going to be ours?
Yeah.
We buy it.
Exactly. And it's yours, and you have to maintain it as well. Yeah. Correct. But in the long run, it's a saving because, like I said, it will extend the life of the pond. There's claims that from the Water Management District that every 25 years you had to dredge the pond. Well, I haven't seen that because it's so expensive. They opt to use these aerators to minimize that accumulation of muck.
Are we sure that we have selected the best alternative?
Well, there's a few alternatives that I've seen, and some owners have done it, is they call it geobag. A geobag is a huge bag that they put on the shoreline, and when you have erosion, they send a diver with a pump, and they pump all the muck, and they pump it into these bags, and they put back the dirt and then the whole thing is just to build up again the shoreline. But that is expensive. I mean, you're talking serious.
Not only disposal of the sediment that you're picking up has to be taken care of as well.
Exactly.
So it's not a very good alternative. But what about chemical treatment? We've been doing chemical treatment for a long time. Obviously not very successfully, right?
There's a limit. I guess when it comes to to problems, and this is where I feel for the lake vendors. When they're coming in here with chemicals to treat something, they're treating a symptom of a greater problem, and the greater problem is the nutrient enrichment that occurs over time with these lakes, and it's because of choices we're making. You know, we choose to have green lawns. We choose a species that requires fertilizer. Maybe we choose native plants because they need less care. But when we choose exotic plants, we're increasing our chemical rates on terrestrial systems. And so if we're not being wise when we apply fertilizer and you know, leaving it up to the rain to water those things in, a lot of this stuff goes in, and we're always going to have some level of intake into our lakes. We're in a very high zone for natural background phosphorus by geology and soils. So a lot of our areas are already predisposed to having nutrients in the soils. When they built these lakes, correct me if I'm wrong, it was basically a mining operation. You know, they dug out a hole and they brought all these nutrients up to build up the land. And so they're in our soils, they're existing in our lakes, and you know, it's nice to see those results with the alum, with the mineral that we can put in there to bind the phosphorus levels to try to control those. But each lake is going to be its own experiment. But if we're collecting data, we can justify the need, and we can prove show the improvement in the data. And yes, there's expenses, but we're basically putting our lakes on a better life support system, because right now they have no life support.
Just if I could expand on your question that you did have too. As the board, you asked about the bidding process and did we look at other companies. As a board, we went out for a request for proposal, and there really were only 2 players in the game for aeration. So what we did is we looked at who had the best product out there. The products were demoed, and the company that the board had chosen to go ahead with that had the best product in the long run, warranty-wise, guarantee-wise. So that's where, and you also asked about the permanency of the aeration. As the board, we are looking at this as a permanent installation because we are putting in permanent electrical runs, permanent boxes. So this isn't going to be something where the data is going to show that, okay, we've turned the curve, so to speak. There's no need for aeration. That'd be all predicated on everybody stopping fertilizing their lawn, the birds stop pooping in the lakes, the city switching to regular water instead of reclaimed water. So this is a permanent solution we are looking at because of, like Jim said, all the terrestrial things that we do that have impacts on the lake. So hopefully that gives you a better idea that, yes, we went out for a request for proposal. We picked the best company that we believe is out there, and this is going to be what we believe through data and science, a permanent solution to our lake issues.
The location of the aerator pumps, the oxygen,
Yep.
Oxygen producing equipment.
Yep.
Is it going to be in a place that is going to affect the life of the next door neighbor that has that equipment?
Great question. I think.
Yeah, so our sales manager for Vertex went around and picked the best locations possible so it doesn't, you know, noise impeding on you guys wanting to sit out on your patio and then you hear the humming noise. It is a very light humming noise. It really isn't, you know, something loud. Doesn't sound like a freight train coming through your house. It's nice and it's like a low hum. But yes, we did pick locations where it wasn't going to disturb you guys. So we did give a proposal to aerate all the lakes. We tried doing the most cost-effective thing for you guys, which is run tubing through lake connector pipes to save on like boring cost, electrical cost, stuff like that. So we picked the best locations that was going to save the community the most money. Yes, I don't have that information on hand, but. I don't have water quality data to say that it is the best lake, but I mean, the other lakes don't have aeration, so.
Just look at that lake. I mean, that's a standard that it is possible, is what that tells us within our community. That lake had challenges very early on, and I did present on this at the last board meeting, But that lake received aeration. It was in 2007, and so it was only a few years old, that lake. And the condos, townhomes, whatever they are, they weren't quite built out at that point. So there wasn't a whole lot going on with the landscape just yet. There really hadn't been any real established long-term use of fertilizers. So it almost suggests that there was some predisposed element of possible phosphorus in that area. At least that's what I'm speculating, that might have really caused that lake to get green so fast. And then they had run that aerator for the better part of a year, and it got even greener before it got clearer. So it really thickened up. But it's hard to say. Again, we weren't collecting data on that lake. It was just, they saw a problem and they responded with best practice. Aeration is just the backbone. There's many other things that have to happen to be successful, because if we could spend all this money, but if we're still going to be careless about how we fertilize, we're still going to choose plants that require it, like I said earlier, they're only going to work so well. So if we want to maximize our investment and get the best return on it, we have to make other changes. Yes, people will have to pick up their dog poop. People will have to stop feeding wildlife. Those are things that cause problems in the lake, and so they can cause health problems for us too. So, you know, everybody owns a stake in this community. So we're basically we're connected through investment to our community, and we want it to shine from top to bottom of each lake.
When you're talking about aerate, it's compressed air, right? It's not.
It's right. We're not producing oxygen. We're driving atmospheric air down into these lakes. Yes, there'll be stations that are set up. I trust they're insulated. I think our timing is probably good, because they have really gotten creative with how to engineer this. There's a lot of efficiencies with using the interconnects of the lakes to manage the pipes, having a central pump station that can support several lakes. You know, so, and having the technology, the diffusers that they have at the bottom, they can kick them into a self-clean mode. You know, so I think as far as the maintenance and the operating expenses, it's much cheaper to pump air under a lake than it is like to pump a fountain. I forget how much that fountain costs us a month. $300-400 a month. Yeah, and I don't know what you estimate on. It's a question we should get answered just to fully understand.
In fact, with the fountain, we did a study and we found, yeah, it's just surface water is all that what the fountain is doing. Run underneath the fountain, there was no oxygen there still in some studies that I've done. But the bubblers, again, it's the bubbles moving convection cells. That's what it does. It's just moving the surface down to the bottom to the surface. It's not the bubbles mixing with the water. No, it's the motion of the mass of water. That's what it does. Yes, sir. Question. Well, you're a private community, so that will be very hard to sell into the state or local. However, there is a Florida Lake Management Society who is stimulating communities to put a lot of efforts, and then they have done a lot of efforts beautifying their ponds, and there's a program called Beautify Your Lake. So there is possibility for some money, but not to put aerators, no. It will be something more affordable, like, I don't know, a few $1,000s just to improve the shoreline with vegetation if it's necessary. But an aerator, that's a big proposition for a private, state government to apply.
I've been told that Calypso Lake is different from the other lakes. Is that true? And would that mean that it would be a different need a different system?
It's true that it is outside of our stormwater management system, and if you ever go there, you'll notice a very high berm that surrounds the perimeter of that lake. So really, we don't have a lot of connection, discharge into that lake. It stands alone as a separate body of water. There's another lake that's just up the way. It's closer to Royalty, at the back of Sunville, I believe, Sunvale. That's also part of an existing borrow pit. This was from, I don't know how many decades ago when they dug everything up to build up the land. So that's, yeah, that's not something we're going to make any investment in, because we're not having a lot of influences into that lake. We're not causing the problems in those lakes that we're having in other lakes, because we're containing everything else we do within our stormwater system.
So this proposal
the two borrow pits, Calypso Park, and there's another one, really doesn't have a name. Okay, yeah, here we go again. Okay. Oh, that, who knows? My guess there is, a lot of, who knows if it will ever happen. I mean, but they're going to have to clear out all of that invasive vegetation. So every bit of vegetation you see over there that you might appreciate, it'll all be gone. It'll be a different scene. Likely, we're gonna be taking in some wildlife. I guess mainly in the form of reptiles. Could be dispersed through our community. Again, this was their home first. Yep. So I don't. There's no real water connection that we have. They do have, the property line is on that lake, so I don't know what they could possibly do.
What are littorals and what purpose do they serve?
Oh, yeah, I'll take it. Yeah. Well, you have a beautiful littoral planting already to start with. Now, can improve? Yes. And those are the plants who are right on the shoreline, and they can get their feet wet. I mean, feet, they don't have feet, they have roots, and then they're standing on the water. But as the water goes up, they can tolerate being some portions of them in the water. So as the water goes down, they can survive too in the dry season. So there are all the shorelines. They are the best thing, but no, let me clarify something, because most people think that the plant is absorbing nutrients. No, the plant is just standing on the water, and if you see around the stems of the standing water, the stems of the plant, they're surrounded with periphyton. These are algae that attaches to those, and they form that scum. And granted, if you have the plants, you might see the scum, but the beauty of the plant, it has a flower, so people see the flower, but not the scum. So keep an eye on the flowers, not on the scum. But trust me, every plant that has an opportunity to grow, it will grow, including the scum, the filamentous algae. So sometimes I tend to say, oh, be a little tolerant with nature, because that scum that you don't like, birds and some other animals like it. And then you are filtering nutrients with that scum that nobody likes. But that is truly where the nutrient filtration happens. Not the plant is not sucking the nutrients from the water. No, it is the scum that is there. But again, you see the flowers, and the more flowers you have, the better. And it's kind of beautiful. That's the way nature works. Huge areas where the plants are standing. Again, it's all the filtration. And then as the wind moves the water through the stems and the scum, and I should not call it scum, periphyton is what it's called. Periphyton. As it goes, that's where the nutrient, and then you start clarifying the water. Fish are coming. Birds love the fish. Everything else goes along with that.
Well, Jerry Evans is the new sheriff in town, so it is time something gets done. There was plenty of talk and plenty of evidence. You can simply look at the Google Earth. You can roll it back the years. You can see precise cuts on, bare areas along there. But then we can roll it back and see evidence. Oh, there were plants there. So we could build a case, obviously, for those residents and pursue it. I have recommended for years that we plant every year. I mean, we don't plant it fully, but at least we put some new plants into those areas. If we were to plant those areas and really tighten up our policy with residents, then yes, we could find them. But we've let too many years go by, where there was just talk. We're going to do something. We're going to go after these people. It never happened. It's not something the committee is really charged with.
In fact, other communities have said that. If they were protecting the plants at the beginning when they first built it, they wouldn't have the erosion problems they have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars just to fix it, because they didn't respect those plants because they were like too weedy, and then they just remove them. And now they have the wind just pounding on those shoreline. And then now it started, getting a threat to their backyard swimming pool because it's right next to the pond. And that happens. Protect the shoreline, protect the littorals, you will prevent these erosion problems. And that's the number one cause in most problems in stormwater ponds, erosion. Then second is the water quality, and then, Yes. Give him a chance to this.
With the intention of putting aerators into certain lakes, what's the matter with putting submersible water pumps from the intake of one lake to the output of the other lake to keep the water going slowly all through the lake? Taking up all the chemicals, taking them to the top of the water, letting them evaporate. Because the problem I see is there's no movement of the water between the lakes, only when it's raining. If they had it going year-round, it'd be a different story, wouldn't it?
Well, there are several issues there because your water doesn't move unless there is a gradient, a differential level. That's the only way that the water is going to move. So you have pretty much cells that are separated by culverts. So keeping an aeration in one system just to keep himself in the summer, well, I don't know, in the summer it might be some flow, but in the winter when the water is not flowing so much, keeping that aeration in that single cell, which is a pond, separated from the other ones, it will be good to have it constantly going. Our winters are not like cold, there's ice forming. It's still gonna be warm, and warm for the plants to grow and algae to build up. So you gotta have something in there to break that stratification and also break down nutrient concentration pockets that I was mentioning earlier. Now, as far as moving water and doing, that's another engineer process, and I don't know what calculations they had to come out in order to keep that, I don't know, like a motion of water from this area to the, I don't know that one. There are fountains, not fountains, what do you call it, horizontal, I don't know what they call that. It's like a motor that shoots horizontally. Yeah, they have some other stations in other places that I've seen, but I don't know if it's necessary here. Well, do a study.
Part of the challenge there, I would think, is because there's a depth in all these lakes that goes far below the connection pipes. So if everything was shallow, and you could do the circulation, you could move a higher volume of water, but you're still going to leave that water down at the lake, and that's the troubled water that's down deeper. It's where we lack dissolved oxygen. So I think it's an interesting thought.
Yes, but you could put the water pump down in the lower part just above the muck, and they can shoot the water over to an outlet and have the water circulating between 7 or 8 ponds on any.
Let's hear what Lexus has to say.
Well, let me tell you one thing. It's the amount of horsepower that you have to have for a pump. It's a lot smaller than the horsepower that you had to have for this horizontal propeller motion thing. I mean, it's like a 1 horsepower. The other could be a quarter of a horsepower. I mean, and then keep it at one running all the time, maintenance and future, and there's some other issues there. I tell you, bubblers are the ones who, most golf courses have done that and learned it, and they teach that all the time, and because golf courses see the economics as well.
That was actually pretty spot on.
I just wanted to ask one more question. I think you're out of questions. No, but has anybody looked at putting this kind of installation in the area? What is going to be the impact into your assessments cost? What we have to pay for this?
First and foremost, when we went out for the RFP, there was a maintenance component within that bid to see what we're going to need for maintenance as if pumps go bad and everything else. So the cost of that is included in what we are paying. So the onset of that, there's no additional costs. The maintenance is already built into there. Plus, there's going to be an ongoing maintenance, which from what we're seeing now is going to be covered by what we already have, the funds that are coming in. So everything that we perceive, the cost of the system, the maintenance cost is going to be covered by existing funds that we already have within the community. No, in perpetuity. So, and just to give the gentleman, expand on what they said also too, that pump is a 5 horsepower pump at the fountain. It costs us, I'm going to say, between $300 and $400 a month just to run that pump. The pumps that we're using are going to be about 1/4 horsepower pumps to pump air, easier to pump air. It's going to be about $60 to $80 per box, depending on how many pumps are in that box. So aeration, cost-effective wise to move air, cost-effective is the way to go, and also effectiveness, the bubbles, is the way to go, because again, it's all backed by science. When we went out and we talked to the experts here, they're telling us the gold standard is aeration, along with best management practice that Jim and his team are trying to do. So in conjunction, we're going to be way ahead of the curve in the future.
So we to decompose. So we kind of did touch on that during our walkthrough, and Ernesto brought up a good point about fragmentation. So when we remove that, you have the possibility of these plants, spreading. And honestly, it's more cost-effective to treat the underlying issues within the ponds, like the water quality, looking to put like best management practices for fertilizer, looking to change your sprinkler heads away from the pond so it's not going directly into the pond, creating this stuff to grow more rapidly. So I honestly, my personal opinion, I would vote against doing physical removals.
Is that something that's easy to control? Those I read, and some article says it's like they're very difficult to.
It's one of the most difficult weeds to control, and there is a biological control. I was at a meeting last week where we were given those results for Lake Watch, and they have had a lot of success in Florida with a alligator weed beetle that they have. And so these are the things we need to consider, because we have been on this chemical road for far too long, and we're crossing thresholds in areas where this is the first year I've seen it in a while where I've seen a rebound of the littoral plants in some areas. We want to see it in all lakes, or it could mean that we've just really have gotten too carried away and have we talked about this too, how there is a symbiotic relationship between the plants and bacteria that's down on those roots, and it's in the copper and things that are used can actually kill that bacteria and subsequently kill the plant. So we're losing beneficial plants. We stopped at one lake that last year, summer, it was dominated with alligator weed. I would say 70% of the shoreline growth was invasive. There, yes, we thought about removal. That could cause a disturbance. We thought, hey, it's important to control this, but then we have to put more plants in if we want to change the balance, because right now the invasives are winning, and because they own the most space, they have the most opportunity, they will consume the nutrients. Again, things like the irrigation, the fertilizer, it makes our yards grow, it makes weeds grow too, especially.
I would like to add one thing about the use of herbicides, because the one thing is, the plant, you spray it, and in the old days, and probably the previous management company, lake management company, used one of the chemicals which is cheapest of all the herbicides. It's copper sulfate. It's the cheapest of all. It's still legal to use. I mean, you can use and kill the scum, but the copper that it remains in the system is just really detrimental. End up killing the littoral plants. They say, no, it doesn't kill the plant, but kills the bacteria, you say, in the ground that it makes the life of the plant. So they sterilize the shoreline by putting this copper sulfate. Now, they're planning on using other chemicals, not copper, hydrogen peroxide based chemicals, and they're a little more expensive, but they're better in the long run because you're protecting the shoreline by using other type of chemicals. Again, they're more expensive, but that's the right way to do it. The other companies, and I know that because that's the way that they make their living, the cost is very low, the profit is very high. But when you put a higher chemical cost, then it's less profit. And they don't want to do that. They want to keep their big profit. So that's the sad thing about the truth of that. But you go in the right way. And I really encourage to have this switching and knowing what chemicals are you using. Yes, sir. The quantity and the health of the fish population. I don't know. But for what I heard, you have the only fish that I want to warn you, and if you see it, get them out. Is the well, you have some restrictions, I know. The Plecostomus, the armed catfish. It's a very strong shell type of black, and it makes holes on the shore. That destroy the shoreline. You don't want to have these tunnels, and if you see a tunnel and a fish there, you know, at least mark it and have somebody with the proper credentials to come and remove it and get rid of that, because it is an invasive, this Plecostomus, and you'll see it online. And if I made it bad, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Yeah, yes.
He wanted more in the fish. I mean, there are fish in our lakes. We've done some stocking of fish. We did that back in 2015 as part of a biological control for midges and mosquito larvae. We put in bluegill. We also did the gambusia, the mosquito fish, and we did the red-eared sunfish. We were also wanting to use the red-eared sunfish, also known as the shellcracker, as a control for the island apple snails. You see those giant snails that are out in our lakes, and the pink egg casings that they put up on the plants? You guys ever see those little pink bundles out there? Eggs. They are in every lake. I mean, we should assume. I know Lexus does a good job of monitoring and looking at that. You know where they came from? They came from the same place as the armored catfish, the Plecostomus. They came from the aquarium trade industry. So, you know, hey, you let this stuff go in Minnesota, well, probably not going to survive the winter up there. But down here, things take hold. And I've seen these things. They're monsters. They're easily 2 feet in length, and they're like these giant termites that live in our lakes that will eat our banks. You know, they're not going to eat us, but they're definitely, they do create some problems. But we have bass and other fish out there too to appreciate. Tilapia is a fish that's here, and cichlids. I'm sorry, I could go on, but go ahead.
You mentioned and you talked about shore erosion. Is it a problem here, and how big of a problem? And is it more so on certain lakes? And if it is a problem, how is that going to be addressed? I live on Maribel. We've been there 10 years, and I've seen some of it kind of going down. When we had that massive storm, I think everyone kind of had it. It literally kind of went halfway up. I wouldn't say it was because of a less shore. But is there, again, shoreline invasion going on? Is that something that needs to be addressed?
So yes, you guys do have some erosion issues. I'm going to use what I call lake number 7. That's your Blackburn Greendale Lake. We have, our technician has noticed, and my general manager, who is in the audience tonight, he has noticed some erosion on some of your lake banks. You guys are definitely over irrigating, and it's causing, when your landscaper goes around the lake and mows, it's causing ruts, creating that bank to slide down, the erosion to start occurring. And also, a lot of homeowners have been planting landscape beds too far down into the easement area, which is kind of blocking some of our easement access around the lake, which makes treating the lake a little bit harder for us. So, I have gone around and done some littoral plant, monitoring for the board, and I'd be happy to go around and do some erosion monitoring for you guys as well.
We've noticed on our lake that the aquatic plants in some areas are probably affected by the traffic of fishermen, where the fishermen go most of the time. Would the Lakes Committee be ready to make a recommendation to the Sandoval board to outlaw fishing on all the lakes except Calypso Lake?
Well, after the situation we had with the Anhinga and the fishing line, I mean, I'm sensitive to that. I think, you know, I see a lot of people fishing where they shouldn't be fishing. You know, we do have restrictions that fishing is only allowed from the common areas. I mean, but there's people that just think, hey, because I can walk here, I can be here. You know, there has to be some more discussion about that, how we limit that. I don't know that too much of I mean, the littoral plants, yes, if you catch a big fish and you plan on landing it, you're going to be pulling it through those plants. So there's going to be some destruction. But there's a lot of birds, the moorhens. I know they trample quite a bit of that spike rush that's out there, and they do a pretty good job on there. It bounces back some of the time, but not all the time. I think, you know, having an environment where plants can grow is what's important, because they will rebound, but, you know, not sterilizing the environment as we may have in some areas. Yes. They don't go that way. I doubt they would let us discharge directly out into the estuary, but they go into Cape Coral and they work their way out to the Caloosahatchee and also down south. We would need a storm surge to bring salt water in. We're not very far from brackish water here. I mean, we're less, if it comes over Veterans, it's as good as here.
Just want to say that I do agree with the proposal from this channel on the fishing. Fishing is a problem for our lakes and for our privacy and for the proper use. When I bought here, they told me that the only place that there was going to be allowed to be fishing, and I have bought 10 years ago, 11 years, was Calypso Lake. That was prepared for the area to be a fishing pier for them. We have changed that since we have done, you know, a lot of loosening of the fishing regulations. But maybe this is a point that we need to look at and think about again.
And again, it needs to be presented to the board, you know, the concerns. Are we following the current policy? If we're not following the current policy, then we need to look at some form of enforcement. Hey, when I bought in here, what sold me at the Welcome Center was there was a fishing pool sitting in the corner. And I thought, you mean I can fish in my own yard? And that's all I do. I mean, I may wander over to my neighbors, and I tend to let them know, hey, I'm just gonna go over here and look at things. But again, it's one of the luxuries we should enjoy, but when it becomes abused, then
For the homeowners,
yes,
not for the rest of the people that walks in.
yeah, we have to get better. Right, yeah. If maybe we can hire them to come in and take our invasive fish.
Before you all go, I want to tell you something about it. If you guys participate in Pond Watch, welcome aboard. And if you are definitely a very high level of the maintenance and the lake management that has been happening here, I'm really looking at the ponds compared to other ponds. This is in good shape. It's in good shape. But now, it can be better, yes, and we're already looking for that, because it's right now, it's a great location to start, and it's a great improvements to come apart. And so you definitely have a nice trajectory of knowing stuff, and then, again, go outside and compare to other lakes, and you'll see, hey, our lake is not that bad after all. That's all what I had to say. Thank you.
Well, good. Well, we really appreciate the interaction. Thank you, Ernesto and Lexus, for your time. This was very entertaining. We'll still be cleaning up our mess here, so if you do have any other questions, sure, go ahead. Here, why don't we have him come on up? Because this is well, you got a captive audience for about 2 minutes.
Yeah, so I know your brother from, I rode motocross with him back in the day. I'm also a Florida native here. I've been in the Cape Coral native, actually. I've been in the area, I've been in landscaping since 2006. I'm a state certified arborist, and now I'm in front of people, so I'm starting to stutter. So I apologize. I'm a landscaper, not a public speaker. But what I wanted to say to you guys is I do think this community is beautiful. I'm invested into this area, as is most of the people in our company. So I just want to say that I'm willing to work with you guys on the irrigation. We've only been here for like a month now, but I'm open to whatever you guys can do to help us. Like you just said, the irrigation's hitting the lakes. Most of our communities, the irrigation comes from the lake, so that's probably something that a lot of landscape irrigation techs don't pay attention to, but here it is reclaimed water, so I didn't even think of that, and that makes a lot of sense. So whatever we can do to help, I just want to let you guys know that we'll do whatever we can, and I'll give you guys my business card so you can let me know the readings, and hopefully together we can make your lakes, a lot better. So, all right.
Thank you. And so you'll be at this week's landscape committee meeting?
Tomorrow?
It's on Wednesday. Allison, so he'll be at the meeting?
I could be there.
Well, that's for her to decide, but certainly we want to have that collaboration. It has to be a shared vision between the Lakes Committee and the Landscape Committee because we have to have that common goal. Yeah. Yep. Very good. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you all so much. Really appreciate seeing so many people here tonight.